I think it all comes down to incentive structure, Brandon. Like I just think that, um, I've got my life savings in Bitcoin, and that wasn't an easy decision to make, but it's only happened because I understand what it is. And I've never sold any Bitcoin, because, you know, I could have gone on a holiday, bought a new car, a new house. There's a whole bunch of things I could have done. But for me, I understand what this asset is. I understand it's multi-generational wealth. I've got a generation coming behind me. I'm going to be a grandfather this December, and,
Oh, congrats.
so for me, I'm like, I feel like I'm the custodian or the guy that's really paving the way for my descendants to understand what this really represents. And so, yes, I do think it's going to change the way we view the world and the way we function. And if you're in Bitcoin now and you see people who are moving fully to a Bitcoin standard now, I mean, that's a difficult thing to do right now for many different reasons for many people. But it is happening, and there are people running businesses that are Bitcoin only. And if you want to exchange value with them, you have to do it in Satoshis, So these kind of things are happening. And the reason why they don't want to accept fiat currency is because to them, fiat currency is worthless, and they'd much prefer to be exchanging their services and their value for a currency that is real, that is truth, that is integrity, that is finite. They're exchanging their value out into the world, and in return for that, they want a currency that they can trust. And right now, we don't have that. Right now, everyone around us is working for a currency that cannot be trusted. And so I just think as we head down this path more and more, and Bitcoin continues to I guess reprice every other asset and reprice every good, every service. It starts to reprice the world, which you and I both know it's already happening, but it's just that most people aren't aware of it. They're not pricing things in Bitcoin; they're pricing things in the dollar or the euro or whatever. But I think that's going to change. And I even think that really high net worth individuals, I think they're going to be the next ones who are going to dive into Bitcoin, because they're going to realize that when they start pricing their real estate, their developments, their stock portfolios, their superannuation retirement accounts, all of these things, they start pricing them in Bitcoin, and they actually see what's truly happening, that the value of them is going down. Not just slowly, this is at a rapid rate. And I want to share an example for you today of a property that my wife and I purchased about 3 years ago, and how, in Bitcoin, that thing, it's going south, So it's, look, I like to think that Bitcoin is more than just a store of value. I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin transitioning into being a ubiquitous part of society. It becomes a medium of exchange and a unit of account, for that matter. But I think a lot of people right now are still very much stuck on Bitcoin being an absolute store of value, never sell it. Yes, you've got to be really careful about what you exchange it for. But I am a big believer in the likes of Tony and Jeff Booth and these people who really advocate for Bitcoin being used as a value exchange, and the way that they say, it really needs to become that for it to succeed over the long term. So, it's I think it just comes down to incentive structure, and the more that people realize that there's a way that they can exchange their value, even if not for Satoshis, even if not for Bitcoin in the interim, they can exchange their value for the currency of the now, which, is their fiat currency, depending on when they live. But in terms of storing that economic energy, storing that value, right now, I think the name of the game is to store as much of that economic output that value exchange in Bitcoin as you can. And this is why we often refer to Bitcoin as a savings technology. So it's incentive structures, man.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Where do you think we are? I know like Dr. Jeff Ross always talks about, and many too, but I know a number of years ago, he was one of the first I would see bringing it up, but just being in the 4 phases of money, the collectible phase, store of value, then medium exchange, and then unit of count. So you're just kind of touching on that, but do you feel like we are close to that? I mean, it feels like we're really in that store of value phase, but do you think we're close to that medium of exchange world, maybe this epoch, or is it maybe next epoch where people start really it becoming ubiquitous, where people are using it? Is it capital gains thing, bills that need to be passed where it's removing the capital gains taxes in a lot of these countries? Is that what's holding us back? Where do you see us on that spectrum right now?
Well, I think it's happening, I think right before our very eyes, we're seeing this gradually and then suddenly thing start to unfold. I mean, you've got, one of the biggest fast food chains in America. I'm not sure exactly where they sit, but, they're now accepting Bitcoin. You can pay via Lightning, to get your burger and fries. I mean, that is the sort of thing that other businesses start to notice that, hey, there's a portion of our revenue that we can actually store in this pristine asset, and so the more people wake up to that, the quicker it's going to happen. I think overnight, I think it's just going to, we're in a phase now, I believe, where we're transitioning from everybody seeing Bitcoin primarily as a store of value to what Bitcoin was really meant to be, as outlined in the white paper, Satoshi's white paper. It was peer-to-peer transfer, and I think we're going to head into that phase reasonably quickly. And you've only got to look at technologies over the last 20 years that we kind of didn't pay attention to for a while, and then all of a sudden, overnight, I mean, look at Uber, for example. I remember being in LA in I think 2012, and my brother was standing on the side of a street. I was saying, geez, I've got to get a bloody cab somewhere. My brother said, man, you got to do this Uber thing. I said, Uber? What do you mean? He said, no, it's a new thing. You just download the app and someone will come and pick you up. And I said, well, who's going to pick me up? Oh, no, this someone, their own car. They've got their own car and they're going to take you to where you need to go. And I said, but I'm not going to get in someone else's car in a city I don't know. And, so you think about that stuff and how kind of foreign these things are in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they just become a reality of society. I mean, I can't remember the last time I got a taxi now. I mean, I just use Uber wherever I go. And I was just in Bali, Indonesia just last week. And whilst they don't have Uber, they got a very similar app called Gojek, and it was just a breeze to use that and get around like that. So, I just think that that's where we are now, man. I think we're whether it takes 2 years, 5 years, I really think we're heading into that path now where more and more businesses are going to start accepting Bitcoin as a payment option. I think, was it Square that just announced last week? Yeah. They're bringing it into their payment solution. This sort of stuff, it's going to become more and more prominent, and so as people start to see that, they're going to go. It's going to push them more into Bitcoin in terms of their learning journey, and then they're going to utilize it, and then I think we'll be sitting here in a few years' time saying it's pretty normal for businesses to accept Bitcoin. So and if the more that this push happens with these potential central bank digital currencies, and the more that people get squeezed by their banks and realize that Bitcoin is decentralized sovereign money that is peer-to-peer, that can't be stopped. I mean, I think there's going to be a flood of people moving over to Bitcoin, but it's these things are gradually then suddenly. That's what I believe.
Yeah, there's definite S-curve adoptions with new products or technologies, that's for sure. And speaking of new products, new technologies, what are your thoughts on some of the, speaking of announcements, the different lending platforms that are coming out and different lending providers, new capital coming into the market, obviously, and it seems like we're just at the beginning of this phase. But what's your take on the lending side of things? And either is it going to reduce sell pressure, possibly because people lending? Is it going to speed things up? I mean, where do you see this kind of playing out as we move forward here?
Yeah, I mean, I pay quite a bit of attention to, CJ. I listen to a lot of his stuff. CJ Konstantinos. He's the head of a company called the People's Reserve, and I'm keeping a close eye on what what he's sharing out there in the Bitcoin community about Bitcoin-backed mortgages and that kind of thing. And I find it really fascinating. And I think that when you have pristine collateral, which is what Bitcoin is, I think that the appetite for these lending products is just going to evolve. A lot of people are going to want to have their cake and eat it too. They're going to want to keep their Bitcoin and post it as collateral in order to access currency to buy an asset, hopefully an appreciating asset, not one that's depreciating. And so, yes, I think that this is an evolving space. I think that there's a lot of people that are curious about this right now, but I just kind of would caution people to take their time. I think that the minute you introduce Counterparty to Bitcoin, then, for me, I'm not a big fan of that. Not to say that it's not for certain people in certain situations. But for me, I'm more of an advocate for self-custody. And you just got to be aware that when you post your Bitcoin with a lender as collateral, all of a sudden you introduce Counterparty and KYC and all of these other parts to the puzzle. Again, some people are okay with that. It's what they're used to. But I just think right now, there's a lot to play out, not to mention the interest rates. I think, 12 to 15% at the moment. If you go to a company like Ledden, for example. So yes, I think it's going to be attractive in the future. But I think as Bitcoin's price really starts to take off, and we see the compounding effects over the next, say, 5 years. And if people are sitting on, a nice stack of Bitcoin that's worth, a lot in terms of fiat dollars, there will be an incentive for people to post a portion of that as collateral to upgrade their home or their lifestyle in some way. But I just caution people to just let this space evolve a little. Be mindful of the fact that Bitcoin right now is probably really undervalued in terms of where it's going to be in 5 years. And so probably the name of the game right now is just to keep your head down and keep stacking and make sure you've got your self-custody set up right. And let that arena kind of evolve a little over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. How do you define money? I know this is something like you were saying this earlier. I wanted to circle back to this for a quick second, that people don't, taking the red pill, understanding money in the first place. These are things that, again, we're not taught in government-run schools. Many of us would say purposely. There's such a big part of your life, and none of us are taught it. What do you define money as? How do you look at money when you're explaining money to someone?
Yeah, well, I think, we have to realize that for 5,000 years, gold was money, and it still is. And it's a great long-term store of value. But, I think I really like the way Jack Mallers defines money, and that is our time and energy in abstract form. Money is our time and energy expended in abstract form. And so when you and I go out into the marketplace and we exchange our intellectual knowledge, our skill set, our labor, When we take risk, we run a business, we capitalize that business with inventory and staff and all of these things. We want to know that we're getting an exchange in return for that output that is going to be value that is preserved, and the reality is that that's not what we have right now, because you and I have no say, no vote, no visibility over how much currency is in circulation. And we don't know what it is now, and we don't know what it's going to be tomorrow or next year or the year after that. All we know is that it's continually expanding. The money supply is continuing to expand. And so you have to ask yourself, do you want to save your time and energy in abstract form in a currency that can be printed, that can be corrupted, that there are no rules, there is no integrity, there is no trust? And so that's how I try to get people to see the light, for them to realize. And in many cases, Brandon, I mean, it's for the first time, people just spend their time year in, year out, doing what they're told, going to school, going to college, going to university, getting a good job, maybe getting married, buying a house. 30 years I'm going to work, and then at the end of that, hopefully I'm going to have enough to retire comfortably. I've got my home paid off. I mean, this is the blueprint for a great life. But of course, that's not what we have, and all of it is a function of broken money. And so, I just like to really help unpack and articulate the problems with fiat money, how we've got to this point. I like pointing people to resources like Lynn Alden's video on YouTube, How Money and Banking Work and Why They're Broken Today. I think that's a phenomenal video. The other one from the English gentleman, I can't think of his name, Joe. What's the Problem? That's a great video on YouTube. Really going after what the problem is with fiat money. And, so until people understand that, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Until people understand that the red pill is what they've got to have a clear understanding of in their mind before they can say, well, okay, I understand the problem now. So that's kind of the light bulb moment that I need to go and learn about the solution.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, then check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.